Good morning. I'm Kim Drumgo, and I'm at the AICPA Global Women's Summit, and we are doing this webinar on human intelligence. And today we have Suri Surinder, who will talk to us about unconscious bias and equality as well. So first of all, let's start off talking about unconscious bias. Tell us what it is.
So our brains are bombarded by about 11 million pieces of information every second, and we're only able to process about 40 of those consciously.
Right.
So the vast majority of the information that we're always taking in is processed by our subconscious mind. And that subconscious mind, in order not to get totally overwhelmed, and in order to make decisions within a reasonable amount of time, has to resort to patterns and shortcuts and mental models. And that's unconscious bias.
Right.
So it's when you see a pregnant woman and you think, oh, she's going to stay out of the workforce to take care of her children.
Right.
She may or may not. Some women do, some women don't. But that's the quick mental model that influences your judgment in the moment of that person. Well, that is unconscious bias.
That's a really good example, talking about women in the workplace. So how does unconscious bias really impact people in the workplace?
Right. So unconscious bias doesn't necessarily have to do with gender. There's a lot of examples of unconscious biases that we all hold that just influence our general everyday decision making.
Right.
For example, confirmation bias leads us to overweight the evidence that confirms our existing beliefs and discount any information that challenges the views that we already hold.
So basically looking to prove our own belief.
Exactly, because we want to be right.
Right,
we love to be right.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of biases that have nothing to do with gender, but certainly many biases relate to gender stereotypes and the cultural shared understandings and expectations that we have for women's and men's behavior. So one example is that women are, quote unquote, supposed to be communal, put other people's interests before their own, take care of the family. Whereas for men, it's a much more allowed role to actually put family second and work first.
Right.
Those are stereotypes. I don't necessarily agree with them, but we've all grown up surrounded by those expectations and by that social messaging.
Right.
And so it nonetheless unconsciously influences our behavior and our decision making.
So when that doesn't happen, what happens in the workforce? So when people don't line up with your expectations or your stereotypes, how does that play out?
Yeah, that's such an excellent question. We actually have done some studies on this in the research, and we call it the double bind, or the competence likability trade-off. Because we find that for women, it's very difficult to be perceived as both competent and likable at the same time. It's easy to be one, but not both. Whereas men don't face that trade-off at all. And the reason that happens is exactly as you articulated, because powerful, confident, aggressive, agentic women, while they conform to the stereotype of a leader, they simultaneously violate our stereotypes of
who they should be
as women. Exactly. And that conflict causes us, sadly, to judge them negatively.
Right. And so how do we get past that? So that's a dilemma that I think a lot of women face in the workplace. How do we get past that?
Yes. And I'm going to suggest an answer that's not very, that's not going to seem intuitive at first. But the research really does suggest that this is the way to go. Which is that our individual minds are really difficult to change. That unconscious bias, it lives there, it sits there, you can't extract it out. But the good news is that bias also lives in the systems and in the processes that we humans have created. So things like how we hire people, how we promote in organizations, how we select people for jobs, how we allocate opportunities. Those are all processes that have bias built into them also.
Exactly.
And it turns out that those organizational procedural biases are much easier to take out and eliminate than are those individual mind biases.
Okay. So now artificial intelligence is now a part of recruiting in a lot of organizations. And so would you recommend any type of artificial intelligence or any type of other processes as we're looking at unconscious bias?
AI holds a lot of promise. I mean, the example that I always love to think of is blind recruitment.
Yes, exactly.
Which is where we take candidates' names and demographic information off of their resumes. If you're a company that's hiring even tens of thousands of people a year, there's no way you could have done that before AI, because somebody would have had to go manually through all those resumes. So this technology allows us to do things that we were never able to do before, which is fantastic and exciting.
Yes.
At the same time, our biased human minds are creating those algorithms, and we are programming in parameters and expectation. We're creating those algorithms. And so we have to be extremely careful that we don't codify and amplify our own biases through those algorithms. And there's data to suggest that in many cases that's already happening.
Yeah.
So we need to be vigilant.
Absolutely. Well, this is really good information, and I know your session will be a great, great success. We're really looking forward to that. This is our Human Intelligence series focused on unconscious bias and equality. Thank you so much, Suri.
Thank you,
and have a great day.